Hey everyone, this is a new series me and Brendan are doing where we can take a look at some albums that we really want to talk about and discuss. This week we're diving into Ironworks by the Dillinger Escape Plan.
Yes, we are. Ironworks is the band's third studio album. Came out in 2007, right?
Yes,
I didn't write
you
this
are
down,
correct.
so I hope I'm getting it right.
I'm gonna let you go, and we're gonna see how much of it you get right.
Okay, so this is the band's third studio album coming out in 2007. After a bit of a lineup change, I believe, for the band. This album sees the band incorporating some different genres into their music. Specifically, a lot of these songs have a bit of electronica in them, which makes for some very interesting songs, I think, throughout the album, and certainly a departure from some of the band's previous more abrasive sound as well.
I wouldn't say this is a departure from their more abrasive sound. This is still really abrasive.
This album is far less abrasive than the first two albums, I think.
I don't think it's far less abrasive than the
Maybe
first
not
two.
Far less, but certainly less. It's certainly more approachable, I think.
I'd say it's more approachable, but I also think that kind of depends on the style of music you're used to.
I guess.
I don't know, if you're used to kind of death metal and stuff, this could be a shock because it's a lot cleaner sounding than some of their previous stuff.
Yeah. I guess I think for the average listener, because this album here, it sees the band quite a lot of these songs have more standard song structure. They have verse chorus song structure, and the choruses are something we're actually seeing on this album, which are largely non-existent on their previous albums.
There's pretty present on Miss Machine. There's I don't know, there's quite a few tracks on that album that I think have fairly distinct choruses. I don't know, I feel like this album for them is this album just is pushing so many boundaries for them, as well as just extreme music in general.
Yeah.
With the incorporation of these really glitchy, I guess I'd consider it drill and bass. I think that's the genre I would describe it as.
The different songs, I think, pull from different areas. There are songs here that I'd say are just pulling from just glitch. Others that are more electronica inspired.
I feel like there's a lot of songs on here that to me remind me a lot of Aphex Twin, but with a more extreme take on that. This is just going back to something you said earlier. You mentioned there's a lineup change. Now I have to ask which member you think is the line was changed.
Fuck, I don't know. Wasn't it their lead singer?
No.
Greg? Lead guitarist?
No.
Fuck, I don't know.
Their drummer.
Their drummer? Okay.
They've changed their lineup quite a few times. I don't think it was until Option Paralysis that they finally settled on a complete lineup. Miss Machine is when their lead singer Greg Puciato.
We're gonna roll with it.
I hope I pronounced his name right. But he came in on the Miss Machine, but his vocals are a lot more refined on this album, I'd say. Not that I dislike his vocals on Miss Machine. It's less rough sounding and more yelly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that does make sense. And there's also sections on this album, or pieces of songs that he doesn't have. He's not yelling. I don't know, Black Bubblegum, for example. He has this falsetto and nasal voice.
Yeah, he's actually singing. That is somewhat present on their previous albums. Miss Machine has some songs, or specifically, I think it's Unretrified and Setting Fire to Sleeping Giants. Greg is doing a singing.
He sing
on those tracks. It feels like the band leans into that more so on this album. The album opens with Fix Your Face, which is I absolutely love. It's just they start the album off right by just instantly assaulting your ears with this super intense blood pumping track. And I guess it's probably my favorite aspect of Dillinger is they have such an interesting way of creating this intensity from this combination of Greg's vocals and the guitars on all these tracks with these super unique, like mathcore riffs that I feel like no other mathcore band like captures or even comes close to capturing. Also, their original lead singer, Dmitry Minakakis, he has backing vocals on the end of Fix Your Face. He's also done the album art for some of their albums. I think it's Miss Machine he did album art, and I don't remember the other ones.
Yeah, for me, Fix Your Face, I love the price for her ending, like outro bit. I think that's like
Yes.
it's an incredibly strong outro to the song, which I think is really
It
really
just
cool, really interesting.
kicks. It just like the song is already like super intense, and it just kicks it up a notch at the end. Man, it's like the backing vocals especially help a ton with that. There's so much more weight to them at the end. And then just like it goes straight into lurch, which is it doesn't give you any time to breathe or anything.
I guess I'm gonna start talking about like the lyrical themes of this album because Lurch is about the narrator being a simp, first of all.
Well, I mean, it's not so much a simp, it's more a stalker. I love the lyrics on this album, how they're like Dillinger has the lyrics on Dillinger songs are like these like really like fucked up, typically about these like really fucked up relationships. And there's just something that's like really disturbing about them that I love, which is like compounded with like the genuine anger that Greg shouts them with. So like just interesting. I love the lyrics all over this album are like, man, I really love them.
I think it's really cool. The lyrical themes of like relationships and like sex and love and stuff like that are pretty much the gist of what this album is talking about.
Yeah.
But again, the way they are approached is very unique. It's not like I wouldn't call any of these like love songs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm like, I don't know. They're good breakup songs.
I don't know, because some of these aren't necessarily
Well, they're not breakup songs, but it's like it get your anger out.
they're cathartic, I guess.
Yeah. There's also, I feel like Dillinger on this record also dabbles with more mainstream sounds, I guess. That's what I call it. It's still very like them. It's still very out there and unique, but it's definitely a lot more like typical rock songs. Like Black Bubblegum has kind of this like groovy riff to it with Greg's kind of nasally or sometimes what's the word for it? Falsetto vocals.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like the riff they use, it's like really catchy, but it's still very Dillinger in how like odd it is. I guess it's like one of the things I love is like they're able to still capture their own sound even when they're like pushing out of what their wheelhouse typically is.
Like Black Bubblegum is like, as far as Dillinger songs go, it's pretty accessible, I'd say, but like it's still very much them.
Yeah, definitely. It's like it's maybe their most accessible, maybe with the exception of One of Us is a Killer, with the exception of that song. And maybe some stuff off the back end of Dissociation. It's more accessible, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's not accessible. There's still like the bridge where they just like go into like a more typical Dillinger stuff and becomes way more chaotic and everything, and then gets back into the chorus. It's just really interesting.
And then I'd say after that, Sick on Sunday is really the first taste that you get of the more electronic style that we've been talking about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I said before it has like a drill and bass sound.
Yeah.
Is the best way to describe it, I'd say.
For me, like there are times where the instrumental on this track, it reminds me of Sweet Trip, gonna be honest.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I'd say like for me it reminds me a lot of Drugs by Aphex Twin.
Yeah.
Like the really glitchy stuff off of that album. A lot of the electronic songs remind me of that, but again, it's still in Dillinger's own style. And like I think like the most interesting thing is just how well it works. There's never a time where it feels out of place on the album.
They use the electronic incorporations to create atmospheres a lot of the time. And I think that really works well, and it complements their musical style and the vocals and lyrical themes quite well, I think.
Then like after you have Sick on Sunday. Sick on Sunday, I'd say it's more of combining their styles, I guess. This electronic with Dillinger's normal style.
So when acting as a particle is like the ambient, it's not really ambient, but it's more ambient than its brother when acting as a wave, which is it's heavier, it's glitchier, it's just a lot more intense. And these two songs kind of go hand in hand with each other.
For a while, I guess I kind of viewed the electronic parts on this album as kind of feeling separate, but like as I listened to it for a while, like I started to realize how well everything meshed. I had always seen the electronic parts as being somewhat separate, but they still, I guess, feel like they're part of the album. Like there's still guitars on a lot of these tracks, and still has this like glitchy Dillinger sound.
I think if you took away the electronic aspects of this album, I think you'd be left with a much more like bare bones album. I think the electronic instrumentation really serves to help flesh out the atmosphere that this album creates.
Yeah, definitely. I think also like I the way the electronic stuff is used also, I think it really helps contribute to kind of this idea of like instability that's present throughout the lyrics with these like really terrible relationships that are being screamed about on the track. Like when acting as a wave, I love how that song builds into the next track, 8:25:88, which as a note is the day and Justice for All release. I think that's like another really great aspect of the album is just how well everything flows together. And like every track feels like it was purposely made to like go lead into the next one, and I think that works. It works really well on this album.
Let's talk about Milk Lizard.
A Milk Lizard is probably the catchiest track Dillinger has ever written.
Oh my god, it's so good. Immediately, like it just comes right out of the gate with this super catchy riff. It's just so infectious of a song.
Yeah, it has like I love the horns on this track in the background. There's such a nice accent to everything. They work so well. I kind of wish Dillinger played around with like trumpets and stuff more in the like in on future albums. But like you have like the insanely catchy riff. I love the lyrics. They're so weird, but it works perfectly. Like my thick tongue hangs down low to the ground, licking up the sweat coming off of her heels. She wants my teeth to wear. She wants my hell to bear. It's just I love how like just weird and creative their lyrics are while still being able to describe these situations.
And combined with such a fire instrumental on this track.
Yes. The chorus also, the like breakdown with this like rapid bass pedal is like really fantastic. Also, I want to mention the music video for this is like really fucking weird because it's like it's in a bar and the band's playing and then a stool it like flies out of the bar and then it eventually finds an old lady and lets the old lady sit down on it. It's really
what an
weird.
Interesting metaphor.
I don't. It's weird. It also like and it flies all over like the city they're in. I don't know what city it is. But like it flies through like a tennis court at one point with people playing tennis.
I don't know. Like just like every part of Milk Lizard just works so well. It's such a good song.
It does. I also love the follow-up, Party Smasher. It's so... I guess I love this, like... There's kind of a back and forth aspect to this album, where, like, they'll kind of hit you with something that's a bit calmer, that doesn't have as much energy, something that's, like, more atmospheric or, like, just a catchy song, and then you're, like, thrown right back in the ringer. You're just, like... They just come back in with this insane ferocity and intensity that I love.
I guess I'll add here. Party Smasher is actually probably one of my least favorite songs off the album. It has this like scrambling guitar which I'm just not really a fan of the sound. I don't really think it works. I do like the sort of kinetic energy that the track has, but just overall the sound of the track, not not vibing with me.
I love Party Smasher. It's like one of my favorite tracks personally. Like especially like the chorus, you have these like this just like intensity like crashing down with the guitars. And I don't know, I really love. I know you said you don't like the like scrambly, the noodly guitars, I guess.
Yeah.
But like I really like that aspect. I like how like just I don't know. It's just really interesting because like to me it doesn't lose intensity during that part. And I don't know. I really enjoy it. I will say some of my. It's hard to say, I guess, for me if I have a least favorite tracks or like Dead is History, I'd say, and Mouth of Ghosts are my least favorite tracks.
Definitely, yeah. Mouth of Ghosts is another one of my tracks that I'm not a huge fan of.
Like, I don't know, listening through, I'm conflicted on my score for this album, basically. Because I was re-listening through with notes, I was like, man, even though before I hadn't enjoyed these tracks as much, they're like still really good. On Dead is History, I love like the build, the like super long like build up of tension on it, and like it when it kicks in, there's like this foreboding feeling to it. It's super interesting.
I really like how with Dead is History, it starts out with this quiet intro, and then you have this, this song really starts and it gets more intense, and then the outro is again quiet, and I think that works really well with sort of what the track is going for, I guess. I think it makes for a really cool interpretation of the song.
And like the track after it, Horse Hunter, I also love the other vocalist on it, Brent Hines, who's from Mastodon. I think works fantastically. I love the like contrast he gives to Greg's vocals, and then them coming in at the end together, just like for me works so well.
The last bit of sort of aggression you really get in the album before Mouth of Ghosts being a very, very calm outro.
It's still a very interesting track. Like it's not like the thing with like Mouth of Ghosts and Dead of His History is like they're not like generic or anything. They're still very Dillinger-esque tracks, you know. Like and you like I don't know, you have like the piano on it and like with the guitars coming in. It's just I still think it's probably my least favorite on the album, but I still think it's pretty good. Like I don't know, the way all the instruments come together still feels very much like them. There's nothing I can think of that reminds me of Mouth of Ghosts.
I agree. For me, Mouth of Ghosts, I think the product here is interesting. It's not something I would go back to, though, personally.
I guess for a long time, this is one of my. I still thought this album was like really good. It was probably one of my least favorite Dillinger albums, but it's like grown a lot on me over time. As I've realized, I go back to this album probably more than pretty much any other album they have. I don't know, there's just something super compelling about the way they take all of these like electronic elements and combine them with their sound and make something really interesting out of it.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely I appreciate a lot of the sort of things that they mixed up with this album. The incorporation of the electronic music and the experimentation they use with that, I think, turns out really well. Them moving to more standard and approachable song structures for a couple of these tracks. It's honestly like a fun album too.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of like super. Weirdly enough, there's tracks on here that I like consider danceable. Like Milk Lizard is like.
Yeah, Milk Lizard definitely danceable, and compared to like Calculating Infinity, like you can't do that with Calculating Infinity, but here it's definitely a lot more approachable and like fun. So
I'd say it's more refined, I guess. There's like it feels like Calculating Infinity feels like there's like this unrestrained like energy to it, where they're Calculating Infinity is like an album where they're just like breaking every rule they can. And Ironworks is like an album where they've kind of found their sound and they're refining it and experimenting with it. I think it's really interesting for that. But yeah, for me, this album's like I think it's really fantastic. I like it's between a 9.5 and a 10 for me. I don't know. It kind of depends on. It might move up to a 10 over time because I think over time, A Deadest History and Mouth of Ghosts might grow on me even more. But like those are the two tracks that kind of hold me back a bit. I guess they're just not as compelling as the more extreme stuff on the album or catchy stuff. Um, but like they're still really interesting, and I don't know. Over time, it might move up to that 10 out of 10.
For me personally, I'm not. I like Dillinger. I don't like love Dillinger in the first place though. Their album, their sound is. It's not really my vibe. A lot of time, the more extreme and aggressive style that they have going on. But I do really enjoy this album, and I think a lot of these tracks are just really great songs, and definitely would like highly recommend it. Even just for how interesting this album is. Personally, I'm at an 8.5 out of 10 on this one.